for those of you who arrived a little late, but a little past 6:30. And this is a workshop of the Tilton Planning Board. And we have guests tonight. And I think since maybe people don't know each other, we'll start by going around the room and introducing ourselves. I'm Jane Alden.
Julia Jarvis.
Lynn Grace.
Eric Pyra.
Ladies first.
Catherine Dawson.
Joe Jasper.
Christine Denvitsky.
Kathy Mitchell. Hi, Helen Hanks.
Paul Rushmore.
Chuck Mitchell. Gary.
Darius Hassan.
All right, well, we have that out of the way. Those of you on the planning board may be surprised to see members of the Conservation Commission here tonight, but we thought since there were questions about what was going on, that we would invite them to sit in with us in our workshop. Let me preface it though by saying that I think all of you got copies of the letter that was sent out by the Conservation Commission, and it was not the planning board's intention, nor my intention, nor Dari's intention to exclude you in any way, shape, form, or fashion. However, it is so noted, and I apologize if that's the way it came across. However, we have noted that in the future, if we are working on something that affects you, we will certainly make sure that you get a personal invitation to our meeting. It was noticed, it was in the minute meeting notes, it was on the website, so. And I also want to say that Dari comes to us with a background in environmental services. I think he spent most of his career, as well as his education, in environmental services. So if it came across that he wasn't concerned about conservation, was not concerned about the environment, I assure you that is far from the case. As I said to Chuck and Kathy this morning on the telephone, those of you who know me know that I have always attempted to include the Conservation Commission in anything that we've undertaken. It was an oversight on our part. We're not included in the workshop, a special invitation to the workshop. However, there were some concerns, and so when I talked this morning with Chuck and Kathy, I asked specifically what the concerns were about the particular recommendations that we were making. And so I'm going to turn it over and after you explain that, Kathy, as to what your concerns were.
If I can, just beforehand, before
Yeah.
we get to Kathy. One of the things right now is that the Conservation Commission, all the members of the Conservation Commission, we had not met since we discovered what you were doing here with making these changes. So the Conservation Commission has not formally met. We are meeting next Monday evening. So any positions or statements that are coming out tonight are not necessarily the Conservation's views, but individual views. The Conservation Commission does plan to spend some time going over some of these things again next Monday night. And I'm sure that when we finish, we will have some specific recommendations for you. In the meantime, I just want to make sure that you understand that this is not a Conservation Commission. These are not Conservation Commission. We never took formal positions on these, that's all.
Okay, and we appreciate that. And I just wanted to add, I will be there, and I know Dari plans to be at that meeting on Monday, and I'm going to encourage everyone on the planning board to be at that meeting on Monday.
Thank you.
Okay? So, you would like to, Kathy, begin by what you had concerns over?
Sure. The first thing I do want to say is that the organizational structure is really well done. That it's cleaned up some of the confusing parts of the original document, and I can't say enough how well that was done. I don't know if you have, I assume you have copies of this. I am looking at the district boundaries, which is on page 1 of the proposed plan. And I noticed that it says surface waters of the state, but then I wondered about Ice House Pond, which is a town pond, are we therefore saying that the district does not include that, and that that's subject to any developer coming in and doing whatever? Wetlands of any size, terrific, I love it. Buffers, it's specified vernal pools and bogs, and I wasn't sure why, and what about marshes and other things, and whether we should be that specific, or whether we should include other things. I had questions about this, and so I noted that. Then on the fourth one, the buffer is 20 feet wide around other wetlands, and I didn't know if we were gonna, just what that meant. Other wetlands and other surface waters. Are there specific wetlands in town that were?
Well, I'm gonna ask Dari to explain that. He can explain it better than I can if you would like to do that. And why you've noted, I know why, but, and I know certain members of the planning board know, but you might wanna explain that, Dari.
May I go through all of the items that Ms. Mitchell just mentioned, or should I?
Well, you
start?
can, I
Okay.
was going to do that, but you're welcome to do it.
Oh, okay, thank you. The first, the question about surface waters of the state, excellent point. Maybe a thought would be to just say all surface waters. I think, to me, that's what we're going for, and it makes it clear. So I think that's a great idea. The third bullet serves to expand. Currently, there's a blanket 20-foot buffer in the existing ordinance. This puts a much larger buffer on wetlands that are deemed to be of extra importance, of very significant value. And those first three bullets were all that existed in the DES model ordinance. So while if we would have just gone with that, we would have had a much greater protection on some of our wetlands, and then we would have let go of all buffered protection on the wetlands that weren't in that third bullet point. So I thought, I don't think the town of Tilton is gonna go for that. We need to do something about those wetlands that haven't been brought in on the first 3 points. So I wrote down buffers 20 feet around all other wetlands and surface waters. I thought, okay, that brings us back to where, sort of for those that aren't in that higher level, that get the 100-foot buffer, now we're still keeping our 20-foot buffer on everything else. But then, that was the first go. Then you see, as just before I handed it out, I put in a note, over 10,000 square feet, because I believe, and I think a regulation should balance the burden that if you're adding a regulation to a property owner, there should be a somewhat equivalent public benefit. And I think when you get 10,000 square feet, a quarter acre, there's a clear public benefit to keeping a 20-foot buffer around that. And then I thought, when you get down really small, if we're talking something the size of that table right there, then you've got, 1,600 square feet of buffer around, that 40 square foot piece of land that happens to have hydric soils and wetlands vegetation. So I thought, maybe we should have some lower threshold. However, I don't think if we completely crossed out the over 10,000 square feet, we're still at that 20-foot buffer around all wetlands. Every wetland gets a minimum of 20-foot buffer, and then we still are proposing a 100-foot buffer, which is a significant improvement, a significant elevated level of protection. So I guess the question is 10,000 square feet too high of a number? Should there be no number? Should it be dropped down to 5,000 square feet? I mean, is there a wetland that's so small that you begin to question whether there's a public benefit in restricting activity around that wetland?
I personally, and again, this is my personal opinion, think that 10,000 square feet is too large.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
So I don't know how,
I think
So-
that should just be all wetlands.
Yeah, I was reading this and Thank you all for having us here and thinking about projects that we've all experienced in the past. And what I envisioned as a new strategy for someone is they could start phasing a project based on 10,000 square feet. So now if they converted 10,000 square feet to non-wetland, they're gonna approach another 10,000 square feet and work a project that way. It's an unfortunate thing we've seen where people don't follow the buffer system we have now. So if we start saying, okay, now when it's over 10,000 square feet, now you don't have to worry about it, we're gonna start having some real confusing situations.
I got a question about bullet 3. Is it just bogs and vernal pools? And then the clarification of specifically, and I know that it would have to be under the definitions. So the only ones that would qualify then for the 100-foot buffer would here, according to this wording, would be bogs and vernal pools. And we've already taken the word marshes out, and I'm not sure how a marsh would, unless the definition for bogs includes marshes. Doesn't even talk about bodies of water being over certain sizes, just those two.
Well, it's actually 3. 100-foot wide
I'm sorry,
underground
Yeah.
I'm
bogs.
sorry, I
Over
stopped
1,000
reading
square
at the first
feet.
line.
Yeah,
Vernal pools over 500 square feet.
Yep.
Wetlands of any size adjacent to water, and all of the wetlands over 40,000. I think you should say.
40,000 is, yeah, it's
Yeah,
about
I
an
kind of
acre.
like the original. Wetland buffer shall consist of 20 feet of ungraded and disturbed land with no structures. Buffer shall consist of natural vegetation excluding invasive species, blah, blah, blah. No structure shall be located within 20 feet of the wetland. It's very explicit.
The other thing is that in the original, the district boundaries starts with a definition. The wetlands conservation district is defined as an area that's inundated. And I just thought that was helpful for somebody to get an idea of an overview and then get into the 4 specifics. On page 2, it's a picky little thing, but the New Hampshire DES is using the New England District wetland delineation from the Army Corps of Engineers for 2000, so that's kind of an update. And I didn't know if there was a specific reason why 87 was used. It just seemed logical to go with the 2000 Army Corps of Engineer delineation. Under definitions, the biggie was removing hydric soils, since that's part of the definition of a wetland.
the reason that was removed is because, the only reason you have a definition is because it's referred to in the body. That is not referred to in the body at all.
Maybe it should be.
Well, the only place that DES refers to it is when they're referring to a map that we don't use.
Well,
So that's why that was removed.
they do, DES, I have it here. Under the frequently asked questions, wetlands are identified based on 3 criteria: hydric soils, hydrophytic vegetation, and hydrology. Plants, hydric soils, and hydrology. So I wasn't sure why that was there. Well, that wasn't there.
Well, that's why it was removed though, was because if we weren't using the map, which is where I thought that was the only place it was referred to, and
But it is part of the definition of
Part
a
of the
wetland,
state
that's all.
definition.
It's, may I speak?
yeah.
I don't see it as either part of, I don't see the term, the actual term, am I missing it? Hydric soils in either the DES wetland definition or the Tilton wetland definition. So really, it would be a term that was defined but never used in the zoning ordinance. So that seems like you don't do that. You don't define terms that you're not using in the ordinance. But that's, yeah. Again, the definition Tilton has of wetland, and I think it works. An area that is inundated or saturated by surface or groundwater. It's important to remember the surface part. A lot of people
Don't.
forget that surface waters can be wetlands at frequency and duration sufficient to support, and then under normal conditions does support a prevalence of vegetation, typically adapt for life in saturated soil conditions, Wetlands include, but are not limited to swamps, marshes, bogs, and similar areas. Well, we have that definition marked as something the planning board needs to make determination as to whether it's the Tilton definition that should remain, or the DES definition that should replace it. But both of those definitions, I would contend are to make it clear what a wetland is, and they don't include the term hybrid soil. So that's the logic behind removing that term.
I had a question about the definition of a bog, where it says a wetland distinguished by stunted evergreen trees and shrubs. What about deciduous trees? Can they be stunted? Why does it only specify evergreen trees?
My guess would be the acidity of the acidic conditions in the bog would dictate that evergreens are what grows in bogs, but I'm not 100% sure on that.
And I think you find that a lot of deciduous trees grow in bogs also. Maybe they should just leave out the evergreen,
Okay,
just say trees.
Where did the definition come from?
that's DES.
So if I could just go back to what Kathy was referencing, under our wetlands definition, it cites RSA 482-A:2, Roman numeral 10, and suggests that we could enhance our definition by inserting the language that's on DES website, to just further exemplify that wetlands are identified based on those three criteria, which is probably in line with that RSA that's already being referenced, just as a point of consideration.
Where is your RSA?
So in the draft that you have, under the wetlands definition, it says pursuant to RSA 482-A. So if you read what we have for a definition, you could do a sub-bullet that pulls in those three criteria that come from DES, and you further strengthen the definitions of a wetland in line with DES, and it covers some topics that people might otherwise miss if this isn't an area of their forte.
Under definitions, I do understand what you're saying about having things that are in this document defined. I found the word structure to show up 6 times in the document, and yet I wasn't 100% sure. I mean, are we talking a garage, a house, or exactly, what could a structure be? Could it be an outhouse?
Right.
When we were
Anything built by man.
discussing the deed for Salmon Run, the lawyer said, be real careful with the word structure.
Well,
because
and
that can be
we've
anything.
had that issue,
So-
I think all of you know, on some properties on Grange Road, that,
So that's not a wetlands issue, it's just a Kathy comment, structure please define.
Should I read respond? Do you want me to jump in and respond to these?
Sure.
Or I don't mean to be
It's on
interrupting you.
page 10 of the zoning.
Yeah, it is
ordinance.
defined.
And
It's
it
already
comes from the
defined.
state
It is
definition.
But
It's exactly the state's definition.
I wanna
However,
see it here.
if you're talking about items that are referenced within the document, such as not including hybrid soils because they weren't in the document, if there needs to be, and it wouldn't do any harm to include the definition of a structure, even though it's included in something else, which I think would just strengthen the document.
Well, I guess the question, and you're saying it's already in the zoning ordinance defined as a structure. When I think about the conservation easements we've implemented as a town, and I don't know, so I'm asking you, do you know if that definition matches what we put in conservation easements, or is it sort of a different definition with a different intent?
to my knowledge, and everything I've been involved with, it does match,
Does it?
yes. Now, if anyone has,
I don't know, I think to bring that document.
I mean, I just want to make sure I'm getting all the comments right. I mean, what Ms. Mitchell is saying is she would like to see the term structure defined in the zoning ordinance. Is that
it
right?
can be the same
No.
thing in the zoning.
it is defined in the zoning ordinance
Yeah.
already.
Right. So I think,
She was saying it's used
Section.
in this section on several occasions. And
Okay,
therefore, maybe we wanted to include that definition here.
oh,
The planning board's position is that we don't need it because we already have it. And it's the
Right.
same meaning whether it is in
and,
a conservation easement or anything else.
and then what's important to remember is the planning board, did make a decision that in working on the, it was discussed at a planning board meeting that, definitions should all be moved to the front of the zoning ordinance.
Because that was confusing to a lot of people.
Because then you find it.
And it's even confusing to us, it's even confusing to us when we're dealing with something and we have to
It'll all be in
go
the
through
front.
15 different books to find it. Okay.
Page
Prime
three,
wetlands, that was another one that.
there aren't any in Tilton.
There, right, and that's why that was removed.
So that doesn't bother me at all.
Okay.
Should be.
There should be, but there aren't.
But there aren't.
Especially around exit 20.
And if in the future, there should be some,
It can be added.
then it can be added,
That's not a problem. On
okay?
page three, permitted uses look really good. I guess I had a slight question as to why conservation area, trails, wildlife refuges, and tree farming BMPs were left out, but I can live with that. What I can't live with under prohibited uses, I noticed that it does not include snow removal from roads and parking lots and ice used to be prohibited. And now they're conditional, and I fully understand that the state lists them as conditional, but we've listed them as prohibited. And I've seen snow dumps with plastic bottles and tires and all kinds of things that the plows brought up. And it just strikes me as frightening that we're now, Town of Tilton is now going to permit people from exit 20 up to Mosquito Bridge to get a conditional permit to dump things on the back of their lot. Everybody's going to tell you that it's an inconvenience and a hardship, and it's financially difficult to have snow trucked off. And I understand it, it's New Hampshire, but the idea of pushing this stuff in the back of your property into a wetland, the outlet mall is surrounded by wetlands. And we've talked to them in the past, they've been wonderful, they truck everything out. But I'm not, well, a lot of stuff. But I'm not so sure that that's going to be the case every time. And rather than get into a position where we're having to go to court because somebody's doing this, that never works. It's easier to have the regulation, you can't dump parking lots, snow, salt, oils in a wetland, or in a wetland buffer, I would argue, but that's me.
That study that we did with Belmont Northfield from Tilton, Lakes Region Planning, I don't remember the name of the document, but in there, it does say that that should be prohibited from, there is a list in there.
So the idea would be that there would be no snow dumps allowed within the wetlands and the wetland buffers, right?
Right.
Yeah, seems pretty reasonable. I mean,
Yeah.
We're not bad people, Terry.
I'm aware of that.
But I will.
You can say they are not bad. Let's clarify that.
I would just bring that up, you mentioned snow dumps. This is something that Conservation Commission has talked about. And I, single opinion here, would like to see the Conservation Commission and the Planning Board maybe sit down at some point and figure out, we're gonna have to deal with snow dumps at some point. It's not gonna go away. But could we maybe come up with something that will benefit the town, the people, and something we can all agree on? That's my
In the
future hope.
future. And that
In
sounds
your spare
reasonable to
time?
me.
Yep.
No, that sounds reasonable,
Yeah.
because it's an issue whenever we have a site plan.
Yeah.
As to what's gonna happen with the snow.
Right.
And, you know, we're told, well, it's gonna be hauled away.
Yeah.
However, we really have no way to enforce that or
That's right.
to check on that.
Yeah.
So,
Generally, when those come forward, suggest, some real high berm over the spot that looks the best to dump it in the wetland. Why don't you put like a 4-foot granite side or something, that the plow's not gonna wanna go through, but we know that's a want.
Agricultural should be left in too as a condition.
Thank you.
of the permit.
Fine.
Vermont was in a state of emergency with their agricultural operations and their wetland. What if they still are?
I don't know, but I think we're gonna see more and more of that as people are trying to think of ways to use their property. We had one example of it last year, and I think they did a pretty good job of managing it. I checked on that. I personally checked on that quite often.
Does the definition of agriculture include silviculture and aquaculture?
It's a huge definition, but I believe it does.
Then again, you get to the point of whether or not agriculture has to be a word that is defined here, or do we just, is it defined anywhere else locally? If not, it might need to be defined.
I believe it is defined.
Well, in our original, it cites the RSA that defines both of them.
I mean, yeah, defining out agriculture and potentially working on a definition for agritourism is probably something that's a good idea, definitely. It's not I think other towns that are dealing with the issue now, a lot of the, as Captain Dawson just said, that, it's emerging more and more. It's a way of people utilizing their land. It can be a complicated matter, but definitely something we should.
Well, the situation with Beans and Greens is a
Yes.
real good example. That's one of our neighboring towns, so.
Right.
What do
think
they
they just-
decide, yes or no? They keep going back and forth.
I think they took
Yes,
the
no, yes, no.
agro-tourism out of that definition, Hilton.
Yes, no, yes, no. Will they or won't they?
But then I think Beans and Greens is appealing that, and
and the planning board and the zoning board are in this fight as we speak. Special provisions look good. I like the septic, which of course has nothing to do with us, but I still like, I want you to know, I do like that. The wetland buffer used to be in there, the 20-foot definition that was pulled out. I assume that's because it appears earlier in the document, so that's fine. Non-conforming uses, why was that removed?
Why is that struck through? Is that what you're asking?
Why was it removed?
Oh, well, again, it's intentionally not removed, but struck through as a note to show that we're not ready to remove it yet. The discussion surrounding that was that there's a non-conforming use section in the zoning ordinance, and that I had asked planning board members to take a look at that section so that we could talk about how we want to address this, whether this non-conforming uses section should remain right where it is, or whether the non-conforming uses section that's already in the zoning ordinance addressed everything that's here, or a third possibility, I guess, would be that this is removed and the non-conforming uses section that's already in the ordinance is slightly changed to make sure everything that's here is covered. So that's, I guess, a somewhat unresolved matter that we probably should take care of tonight. So we can definitely make a note to address that.
Does it have to be tonight? Because that's my last point.
Oh.
Does this have to be in place for January, public hearings to be voted on in March? Because where the Conservation Commission is going to discuss it next Monday, I would, and I'm just one person, and I'm not trying to be obnoxious, I would like to see us spend some time reviewing this. I would love to contact DES and ask them for some input. The New Hampshire Association of Conservation Commissions offers suggestions and advice. I've been looking up under Merrimack, Concord, Rye, Durham. what they have, just to see how they're similar, how they're different. Is there anything that they thought of that maybe I haven't or you haven't? Just to look at it slowly and carefully and make sure it's done really, really well, so it's a model for other communities. And on a personal note, and my husband doesn't want me to say this, but I will anyhow. Some years back, there was a similar situation where another planning board said, we're gonna have a public hearing, if the Conservation Commission wants to come, that's fine. I showed up, I was the only member of the public there, and they told me I had 5 minutes to speak because they were very busy and had important things to do. So I took my 4 pages of typewritten notes and read quickly. And then they said, well, thank you for coming, Mr. Mitchell. This is the public hearing. This means it's going forward. And maybe another time you'll have a chance to offer your input. So when I saw the heading here, adopted at town meeting March, and I'm thinking, oh, here we go again. So I would just like to urge you to give us all a chance to review and think and discuss and do this so well that nobody is ever going to complain. Nobody's ever going to come in here and say, why'd you do that?
Kathy Mitchell's not gonna come in and complain.
Yeah, keep her out.
See, no boxing gloves.
We're a very busy planning board.
And important. Don't forget
And we're
that.
very important. We actually are a very busy planning board. That's why, and I will say, this is a very conscientious planning board as well. When necessary, we schedule extra meetings. Like, this is an extra meeting. It's not a meeting we normally have. There have been times we've scheduled extra meetings to meet with people in town so that they would not be delayed in moving forward. This year, I believe we've had 24 cases.
Something like that, yeah.
Yeah, that's a lot of cases. And when I first came on the planning board, we met once a month. And there was always that second meeting if it was necessary. Since, in the last 2 years, it's met every month. It's met at least twice a month, and we've had full schedules, and we've had people who've had to delay. So this is a very busy planning board. I don't know how important we are, but we're very busy, and we're very conscientious. I think it's really important that we move through on this as quickly as possible. There are going to be hearings. We have time, and if anybody disagrees with me, please speak up. I think we have time to work through all of these issues. We are open. You haven't said anything at all that I've had a problem with tonight. And I think you've made some good suggestions, and I believe that Dari feels the same way, and that the rest of the planning board feels the same way.
It'd be nice to have some other input
Yeah.
besides ours.
So I think we can work with the input that you've given us, and we can work together. We're coming to your meeting, and you're going to be discussing it, so we'll have another opportunity there. That's this coming Monday. We're having 2 public hearings, and we're not gonna say, it's nice of you to come, Mrs. Mitchell, but we're very busy, and we will listen. And if necessary, if we had to delay it, we would be open to doing that.
So you'll be voting on it in March.
Yes, hopefully.
They're nice people.
Many zoning changes that come up section by section on a ballot. How do you intend to handle this entire document? And if that is gonna, because you can't conceivably put this on the town ballot.
No.
So if you put a question on the town ballot that says, do you support the changes being made to the proposed wetland conservation district? Without this document, without the old document, and some kind of an explanation, I think you're really barking up the wrong tree for this year. I really do. And we are more than willing, I mean, if you guys go ahead and make decisions tonight, then I think we need a full copy of all of those decisions and some justifications for
We're
those.
not gonna make a, we're not gonna make a
Just before
decision.
our meeting next Monday, because next Monday's gonna be the first time that we're gonna get a chance to meet before the next public hearing that you're gonna schedule. So these are just our thoughts, okay?
All right, any other comments? Are we moving in the right direction?
I don't know.
I think you've made some wonderful, positive changes. And I think the way that it's being restructured is excellent.
Yeah, plus it's
And-
more.
and kudos
more
to
visually
Gary's
easy
work.
to-
Professional.
Well, it was very confusing to people.
Mm.
And that's not the intention, I don't think of the Conservation Commission or the Planning Board,
What the town.
or the town. Well, maybe of the town. They're very important people. But certainly not of this board.
I think the conservation would certainly commit to working with you to come up with a final document, and we're willing to do that. That's part of our job.
And we're willing to meet more frequently if it's necessary. I think I speak for the board, is that not correct? Am I-
That's why we get all these big segments, you know.
I know. And we're on the budget committee, and every year it never comes up. So I think if we schedule additional meetings, if we need to, if you feel that we're moving in the right direction,
Well, I just, would- I know we went on to the topic of where this document is going and how to get it there, but I didn't want to lose sight of the 3 recommendations that came from Dari on the non-conforming uses section that speaks to the wetland. I would like to see this language exist in the document, so if you decide that it belongs in a cohesive section on non-conforming, I just think that, I don't want to lose, I would prefer not to lose the meaning that's being articulated here.
Yeah. Chairman Alden, may I comment on that?
Yeah.
I don't see any harm in leaving
I
this
see none
section here.
either.
I mean, it's not, it wouldn't be the first time that, you know, there's a similar heading throughout the agenda.
If wherever you think it might help the person reviewing the document the
Yeah.
best. And if you choose to leave it here, you might want to reference in the other section that they should look in the wetland section. But that's why when you suggested maybe it should go all in non-conforming, someone with a non-conforming lot is gonna go, oh, all right, what do I have to go through with this? And maybe putting it all in one spot does make sense, but just wanting to make sure that the intent of the language there exists still.
I guess now's the time if any of the other members here from the Conservation Commission wants to speak up on anything else.
No, I think it's some of the changes and working together is great. After we get the final draft, it would be nice to be able to get together with the planning board to see if we're all, on the same page, if we should tweak or that. Now, when's the public hearing?
They're scheduled 2 weeks.
January 12th.
Which will be before our meeting.
No.
Now, one of the reasons that I don't want to see it delayed anymore is that we had a lot of different issues to address this year. And a lot of them we have decided not to address because we wanted to concentrate and spend a lot of time on each of them. And we have chosen this particular one to work on diligently this year. So as I say, if we need to have additional meetings, you're welcome to come to those, and it might be in everybody's best interest for us to schedule those.
Has there been any attempt to try to correlate your suggested changes with what is supposedly a master plan for the town of Tilton? Does the planning board, did they look at the master plan at all before they attempted to make these changes? That should be
The
something that,
current
you know,
master plan is so outdated.
It's not that updated.
Well,
The current master plan is 1998, it's not that outdated.
And we worked on it as well into the 2000s.
Yeah.
Right, I mean, the master plan that's been worked on for the past 12 years has never been adopted,
Yeah.
and it's been changed several times.
And
So 1998 is the
the one
official
that's
working.
ready to take a further look at, you guys wrote that portion of it.
And that's out of date now.
So that was, it's been 12 years.
Yeah. No, that was 2 years ago they did
Not
Kathy,
No.
what was that classic line
12 years.
that. No,
about Belmont?
I know, I was here.
Go ahead.
I wrote part of that
Oh,
master plan.
that's the document that has a page about Belmont. It drives me insane. Every time I see it, I go berserk.
There's
Oh, I
something in there
remember.
in the
They don't
original
have
about
a
Tilton
page
wanted
about
to be like
Tilton.
Belmont.
We were
It's about
supposed to meet on an
travel in
annual
Tilton
basis
and
on
Belmont?
Tuesday.
Their ideas in Belmont.
Yeah, I just read.
Anyway.
In the draft that was never final.
Anyway.
The last one we saw.
Okay, any other comments from Jim? You're being awful quiet.
Well, I still think that, I'm not a lawyer, but I have dealt with a lot of legal documents, and going back to the hydric soils, it's one of the three tests for what wetlands are, and if we have that referenced in the plan, I think it's going to be in good stead for the town that if there's any question, we can go to those standards with a certified wetland scientist and say, no, Mr. Developer, you're wrong. This is what our people say. Otherwise, we may not have the leg to stand on when we need it.
I
Probably
think-
I could put my developer hat on too.
I'm not sure that Jim saw that.
No, Jim, Helen gave us this, and I think that this is well worth incorporating.
See that?
Sorry, that's my only copy.
Okay.
Trust me.
Yes, that's what I'm talking about, Alan, so thank you for.
Yeah, Kathy did the research. I just think a good way to incorporate is to augment that wetlands definition by, you're using the bullets and reference the statute that says wetland, and underneath put, and these criteria for DES. And then
Yeah.
tidy it right up.
Yeah, thank you, that's.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay,
Thank you.
thank you. We'll see you Monday.
Yeah, sounds good.
6 o'clock.
Feel free.
6?
6.
Do you serve dinner?
At least appetizing.
Usually candy.
And how many, can you ask how many planning board members think they may be able to attend that? You will, 1, 2. I wonder, should we do it as, should we just notice it as a joint meeting? To avoid any complications? No?
I'll tell you what, if you want, when Eliza posts it, I'll have her mention it's with the joint meeting with
Okay.
the planning board.
All right.
So we'll take care of it.
Thank
All
you.
right, thanks.
Nice meeting you.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Thank
Gary.
you. Kathy.
Jane, you want me to leave this in the chair?
Yeah, probably going that way.
I'm a certified
By the way,
We're going next door.
yeah, I'll see you over there.
No question. We're going next door.
Let's take a stretch break now, okay?
Yeah, she's coming down.
Regular guys. Well, this is what we're trying to do, but you can also hear what their point of view is. They're trying to run this right through.
So at the wetland,
Six o'clock here.
meeting on Monday,
Absolutely.
You weren't here.
where can I get a copy?
Sorry, I missed a minute meeting.
You're what?
We got my wife from the that's their suggested changes, we don't know what they're gonna have for us, the final one.
Oh, okay.
Comments.
Well, if you watch
Oh,
the film, you'll see the stretch.
Standing.
Aerobics by Gene.
And when you want them to come back in your
All right, well, thank you for calling.
If you want to be an alternate.
I found it interesting. This ordinance has definitions.
I'm serious.
It starts at,
Okay. All right.
It said it in
Well,
four
here's
sections,
dates.
but now it's specific. I know, which I find interesting. I think they should all be in one place, you know, because then you
And
know.
putting a reference
All right, I
to
love
the
you, Lister.
wetlands section.
Talk to you
Yeah,
soon.
it's because I'm always hunting around for a definition.
One
day we'll be able to have this file, because you can just click on the word arrow in the word and the definition will come up.
Is that something you're gonna work on, Eric? That'd be great.
Yeah.
Do it. I'll take the time and work.
Time is the problem, I think. I know,
So, but one-
never enough.
Oh my God, did she take it?
Should I shut this off? Risky.
Let's talk about Dario.
Should I press off? Just keep it off. I didn't touch it.
We can say things about privacy.
Oh, yeah.
But
How are you
we're
doing?
until-
We're on tape.
we're until-
They don't.
you just whisper.
Oh, yeah. Should do that.
What?
Whisper on the tape. Still on.
They're putting awful things.
Oh,
It's for your entertainment.
Oh, thanks. Well, don't feed the video cameras on.
Okay,
What?
You back?
now I'm upset.
Huh?
They're going next door.
Oh,
Well, I think we don't have to work.
It is moving.
oh, yeah, I mean, we don't, yeah.
You can go in a few minutes, we're not gonna be much longer.
Or we can move the
Well-
meeting there.
That's a good
Put a
idea.
sign on the door.
I'm ready.
I always wanted to have a selectmen meeting over there.
We can have a planning board
No,
Christmas
no
meeting
public
there.
outfits, that's why.
Okay, I think we got enough, I think everything they gave us was great. I think, Dari, if you can incorporate those
Yeah, right.
Okay.
Yep.
and get us the copy
Before Monday.
before Monday?
Yeah.
Is that asking too much of you?
No, no, that's fine. No. The only thing here we've got to do now is our next meeting, unless we call another planning board, will be our first public hearing.
22nd?
No, 12th, I think.
12th January.
January
Oh,
12th.
we're not meeting the 4th?
We're not meeting on the 22nd?
We could, and maybe we should.
I think we
We
should.
We got 22nd,
Yes,
29th.
I think
Okay.
we should.
So if we
12th
meet on the
is too far.
22nd, we're, yeah, right. Then we're in very good shape.
And I think, and what I said, I think that we need to concentrate on making sure that that these changes that we make are the very best they can be.
Of course.
And I think, well, no, I'm instead of just coming up with something.
Right.
And then we can start early next year on some of the things like signage and so on and so forth. So, but this year, I think we should concentrate on this.
I think we should change the signage ordinance. That is a nightmare. It
Yes,
is
it
an
is.
absolute nightmare. I think that we should go back to the one we had before this one was adopted, except we may want to change. The only section is the moving signs.
Mhm.
Yeah,
And
and
then-
that's pretty clear cut in the,
That's pretty simple.
yeah,
And if we change that, Then we can start at the beginning of the year and see what we want to change, because right now our signage is so prohibitive that
Yeah.
it's really hard to attract businesses, especially in the main street. I mean, we cut down trees so they could be seen because they can't have signage.
Which is absurd.
That is absurd.
It is absolutely, because we, you know, our downtown, we do not want it to die.
No,
And it is, one of the reasons it's dying is
Yeah.
because people cannot get,
they can't have
Exposure.
signs. Yeah.
and we don't have a town, because we're Route 3, we don't have a town where we can put cute little cobblestone streets and people can walk down it.
No.
We have to live with what we have.
And 90% of your signage in the town came from the old ordinance. It didn't come from the new ordinance. So if we go back to that one, just before we came up with the monsters, they call it.
Can we get a copy of it?
Do we have copies of it?
Yeah, right here. You did get copies of it in.
This
email.
one?
Is it the one, I think I have it then.
So maybe if we came in next Tuesday.
This is
Sign
the
it.
old one?
Eric's got it right there.
No, this is 2.3, so am I missing it? That's it.
That's the old
Looking at-
signage ordinance.
I don't know why. I don't know
Looking
if
at
it's
how we
missing like
changed
2.1 or
this.
2.2.
Yeah, good
Yeah.
point. I don't know.
Look at the
some of
motion
that.
part of it, of the new one.
This is,
Yeah, I don't know, Eric. No, I guess that's the way it is.
so this is old one.
Yeah. So what we need to do is review this, okay,
Was this the new
and look at
one?
the new one.
Yeah, we just.
No, the new one is what's in the zoning
The
ordinance.
new one's in here,
Right in
it's
here.
So
like
it's new, meaning
million pages.
existing, let's call it, not new, existing, or newer than the old one.
Yeah,
It's Concord's signing ordinance, that's where it came from.
Oh, yeah.
which is absurd because we are not Concord. I have never been able to, I know why, but I won't say that in a public meeting.
You can have one-
Okay,
you
so
can't
that's
have
what
no
we
electronic
want.
sign, Concord, you can't control it.
Same page one.
Oh,
Starts.
Yeah, but you can't have electronic signs in Concord, you can't until, so.
yeah, here's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
But you can pull inside
That
of
page
it and conquer.
starts on page
It's a part.
12.
Okay.
Revised 2008.
This one's amended, the last one was 03. Is this homework for Tuesday?
Yeah,
I was gonna say, let's not do this now.
no, it's gonna be homework for Tuesday,
Okay.
Signage,
okay?
and then wetlands.
And then, oh, sorry.
No, what?
I was just gonna say,
In 2006.
and then I think everyone, based on the conversations we've had at past meetings, I think we've reached the point where doing something with the lighting, that thing about lights turning off at 11, I don't think we can address that this year because, you know, my proposed solution proved to be far too simple. I think we need to address it on a more zone by zone basis. Does
Yeah.
everyone agree on that?
Yeah.
Yes. Does everybody agree?
Yes,
What was that again?
hold off on.
Simple
Hold off
change.
on the
Addressing the lighting, 11 PM, shut off the lighting, just leave it as it is, and keep muddling through like we are now.
This is adopted.
Chairman Owen, can I pass something around?
You may.
Thank you. This is something, I think a lot of us have noticed that maybe the numbering in the zoning ordinance and some of the, so there's some grammatical errors and a lot of just little appearance and grammatical or technical stuff that it'd just be nice as we're, you know, in the upcoming years as we're making changes to the zoning ordinance, it'd be nice to work with something that's a little bit neater and cleaner. And so one day I just said, you know, let me take a stab at this to kind of show these guys what it would look like if I just bit by bit started at least cleaning up the those types of matters. So here's a handout that shows Article 8, which is relatively short, manufactured housing, mobile home and recreation vehicle regulations and standards. And what I've done, it's not even a 2-page section of the ordinance. So in this document, you'll see, I took a stab at what I thought was neatening it up. And this does include more than just the technical stuff I'm talking about. So, you know, it's maybe not the perfect example, and I'm not proposing to just like, I'm not trying to sneak in those other changes I made without planning board review, obviously. But just to give you guys an idea what I think would look a little bit neater and be easier to deal with. I think I showed this to Catherine, but this is the first anyone else has seen it. And I just like, you know, what seems to me a more organized numbering system and more organized, just, you know, consistent, you know, using bold at you know, when you're at a, you know, like 0.1, when you get down to the 0.11, the third digit, then now it's, you know, not bold, but the indentation is, you know, consistency, and then consistent numbering system, and then, you know, things like, in this one I went so far, it's like, something like,
Can I ask you a question? This is affecting, and maybe it's just my brain, but isn't this redundant? A minimum of 6 acres shall be required for subdivision into 2 3-acre lots.
where does it say that? Oh,
3 acres, 6, 2
Eight,
threes,
2
2 threes equals 6.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean,
yeah, I don't know.
me? Or, I mean, how can you have 2
Good
3
point.
acres lot if you don't have 6 acres?
Good point.
I'm just saying.
Just pretend.
You know,
I like
I'm
this
just saying.
square, that's, just keep you awake.
and like,
Because even just
Yeah,
going to the
that's-
sign,
I
you
actually
can
didn't
find where
catch
it
that
started.
one. Sorry, what were you saying?
I said, I like this because even just trying to find signage where it starts, it was
Yeah,
This is great.
clear. I couldn't even.
I like this.
Okay,
Yeah.
I
yeah,
like
and
it too.
But
Much
there is
good.
a reason why we can't remove that.
what?
It just seems.
No, right, I actually saw,
Stupid.
like, okay, look on the old one, our
And isn't
existing
it
one.
3 acres dry?
A minimum of 6 acres shall be required for subdivision into 2
Just cut it
3-acre
out.
lots.
Right.
It's not simple, I mean, you know,
Yeah,
it's
that-
really simplified.
I actually meant, so look at 8.5, 8.5.2 on the old one. Yeah, like this is, I think, along the lines of what Catherine's saying, like things that just are unnecessary, get out of there. So that's, I missed that one. But this one, 8.5.2, the planning board, before issuing a permit, will establish the conditions under which the permit will be issued. In other words, the planning board will do what it always does. This will be done with the best interests of the town of Tilton being considered. In other words, exactly what the planning board always does.
Yeah.
So in this, you know, again, I'm not trying to sneak anything, but I was just trying to say, all right, what would a, you know, give you guys an example of what a neat, clean ordinance without crazy, unnecessary language would look like. And so I did pull that right out, because that's, you know,
But all of that means you're very busy and very important. That's why it was so wordy. Because people will look at this and say, they're not very important.
maybe.
Maybe themselves.
So did everyone get one of these, by the way? I was just kind of talking randomly.
Yeah.
Anyone need one? Okay. So yeah, thank you. If you like it, great.
I like it a lot.
And I
I do
guess
too.
my thinking is that as I think, you know, my first year here, trying to absorb everything, learn how Tilton does things. We didn't propose any changes this year. Now we're coming up with things. But I feel like I'm starting to get enough of a grasp of what, you know, how this town functions, that maybe I can start in this upcoming year doing this kind of work in advance, and we can work on the zoning ordinance throughout and start clearing up some of the simple stuff a little bit on a more regular basis.
It's a big job.
Yeah.
Once
is,
we get
it
this
is.
cleaned up with the definitions, because we don't need town meeting approval, we should make sure the definitions in our subdivision and site plan
Right,
match.
right. Tons of work to do, but
Yeah.
you know, getting your approval and you know, having your confidence on making changes like this,
I
on
love
me
it.
moving forward on
do.
stuff like this, I think will really help us keep on, you know, keep moving forward with this tremendous amount of work that we do need to do. All right, thank you, Chairman All. I know I didn't ask, I know you weren't aware that I was gonna be doing this.
No, I wasn't. It's noted.
Surprise, surprise.
Moving right along, planning board correspondence. The zoning board of adjustment for the town of Belmont, please write this down on your calendar.
Tomorrow
I
night.
would like to have other people with me, if at all possible. The public meeting for the East Coast Militia. It's a continuation of the public meeting portion of the request for a special exception of Article 5, Table out of the zoning ordinance to allow an outdoor recreational facility, motocross track, and related parking lot in the I zone. Right? This is really important for us. Number one, it's over the aquifer. Number two, it disturbs our citizens who live on the lake, who come up here to have a nice relaxing vacation time, and they can't have it because they want this motocross there. The more people who show up from Tilton, I think the better. So if you can at all try to be there,
When is it?
it's
Tomorrow night.
Tomorrow night.
Well,
It's
We can't
7
have
o'clock.
I'll be there.
budget.
I won't be at budget. Peter and I will be at that, so you'll get the other selectmen and the department heads. Then we'll come over as soon as,
So, you have to go, because
they're gonna render a decision tomorrow night. They're not gonna listen to any more testimony.
You don't think so?
I don't think so. Their
Where-
decision, it
where
was
Belmont
obvious
is
their
it?
decision was
Hmm?
made last.
You know, like the
Yeah,
address?
it's right in downtown Belmont at the, what's the name of the hall?
If you go down Main Street.
Hold on.
I don't
The
remember.
Belmont Corner Meeting House. It's 16
Take a left.
Sergeant Street.
No, where the location that they wanna put that.
Oh,
We're at
right,
140, you get 140?
140.
Yeah.
You got,
I got Jamestown Road. Here's Jamestown Road.
where's 140?
Here's 140 there.
516 Depot Street
Okay, hold on.
Where's-
and 512 Depot Street.
Those right in this area here. Those right in this area. Right near the 140 right here.
Yeah.
So, we back out.
There you go.
So there's that, and then it's up here.
And it's the first case that they will hear.
why do they want it in that spot?
Cheap land.
Cheap land.
They
I've
got
seen-
booted out of the Belmont Doctor.
I've seen motocross on
Is
ATV
it,
trails.
is it the land next to
In the middle
FedEx
of-
Freight?
Nowhere.
Yeah.
Okay, so,
So is this, is it this right here?
Racing in cars. What kind of?
Here's
Well, it
FedEx
depends
Freight,
if
this, I
it's
think that's the
demolition
best
derby,
way, FedEx
yeah.
Freight, isn't that the trash place?
okay, it's these two
Circle,
properties
right?
here, but it's, this is, one
Loud,
property is
but
all
loud.
Yeah,
Loud.
loud, and
Yeah,
it's,
depends on what they
There's two
allow.
lots.
You have
This
dirt
is the
bikes, you
conservation
have,
area.
uh,
This is the Tioga.
ATVs, that's why I said,
Oh,
I've
that's the
seen
Tioga.
all these motocross, but they're always
But
in
does that
no
flow
man's
into it, or
land.
does that flow out of
The
it?
Tioga
Oh, I have been by
aquifer
'em.
flows
It's
this
just
way.
like a
The
dirt
pool
circle.
here, you
Yeah.
can see it on.
It's a strange
on that.
place.
So
I think
noisy.
Yeah, it gives them the chance of the speed, I guess.
Have little
But the ones
kids
I've
doing
seen,
it.
They don't do anything but go in a circle in there. Wow.
Yeah, but still.
And it's dirt.
It's the noise, yeah.
The ones I've seen are.
And it's
middle of
dusty.
nowhere.
It throws up a lot
Yes,
of
it
dust.
does.
They'll totally denude that land. Denude it. But it's the noise factor. There's literally hundreds
Yes.
hundreds of homes of people that were affected, hundreds, in Northfield, Tilton,
Unpeeled.
and Belmont.
Well, don't you think a lot of the citizens will show up at that meeting?
Oh, they have been, I've been to
Yeah,
them all.
yeah. They put a lot of them in
Standing
there.
room only.
Really?
Very, very
But
good speaker.
unfortunately, almost everybody on the zoning board is a motocross person.
Really?
Mhm.
So you think it's gonna pass?
Hard to say.
Oh,
I don't think, unfortunately,
I have a question.
I think just because it's gonna disturb people, I got a feeling it's gonna pass. I don't think they feel they've got enough to stop it. And really, I mean, it's not in the best interest of the community. If they, if it is as loud as people say, from what I'm reading it is, they're gonna devalue some of the most expensive waterfront property.
Yeah.
How can that be good?
I have a question.
Mhm.
It might be a complaint, it might be not, it's not meant to take anything wrong or anything like that, but if we did not have this meeting tonight, I would never have known about that,
About what?
Belmont,
about the Belmont thing.
Why aren't you reading the paper to find out about Belmont's planning board meetings?
Because half the
I don't read the
time,
paper either.
What?
half the time I don't read it, you know, I don't,
Well, I've announced it at our meetings.
But, you know, it's this,
I've heard it one all the time.
the,
I've heard of the project, but I haven't taken the time to read about it and.
unfortunately,
educate.
Belmont zoning board didn't declare this a regional impact. If they had, then, you know, it would have been notified to planning board members, selectmen, zoning, people, you know, in the town that are interested.
But I've announced
They didn't do that. So they just inundate us with every
Yeah.
single meeting they're gonna have.
yeah, right.
So,
I mean,
you know what I mean? So that's a lot of meetings.
we talked about this a little bit when the Casella thing came up.
Yeah.
And we realized we somewhat missed our opportunity in January to get involved in time. And, I started saying, well, is there something I can do to make sure that these things are being caught? And then I realized, well, wait a minute, Belmont's doesn't need more of our attention than Sanberton or Franklin.
Right.
And then if we're saying, okay, part of my job is gonna be to monitor the planning board and zoning board agendas for all our neighboring towns, I don't have time for that. So it became kind of this thing, all right, well, the public notice requirements are in place. So it kind of falls on people to read the newspaper and stuff like that, which more and more, nobody does that.
I do.
Yeah, okay.
Well, I'm a selectman, so I normally, I have it look and see what Belmont and Northfield and Sampson are doing, but most people wouldn't.
Yeah.
And like I said, I challenged Belmont why they didn't declare that a regional impact. It fell under all the definitions, and I still believe they should have. If they had, then that would have been the red light for us to let people know. Like Daria said, it's impossible for the town officials to monitor. I mean, when I look at the other towns, it's like at midnight when I'm sitting at home because I don't watch TV. So I'm just sitting.
It's just a thing where,
Belmont let us down, is what they did, I think.
I agree.
How did they get away with that?
it's just.
I
I know,
challenged them,
I
but
mean,
they didn't see a
in
regional
theory,
impact.
if we didn't have this meeting tonight, I wouldn't have known about it, and I have.
So just think about how many things must be going on out there that you
That
don't
other
know about.
communities are sneaking by that are regional
Scary.
impacts.
I try not to think about it, right? I will say, to me, the system for noticing meetings and noticing abutters is getting more and more antiquated as we start to communicate differently.
Well,
the way my
let's
kids
say for
communicate,
instance,
a letter,
if
a
you had
newspaper,
scanned
they've never
that
seen
notice
those
in and
things.
emailed it, I would have read it.
What's that?
If you had scanned that and emailed it to us, I would have read it, and then.
Right, but then we're talking about me getting in the business of scanning
That's not,
and
it's not,
emailing some
that's a
absurd
secretarial
number.
kind of job, and that's not
I don't
what,
have time for it, yeah.
I think Jane, you weren't here when Jane mentioned it, like,
I mentioned it I announced it
I
twice.
was confused, maybe I was confused with I know you mentioned it, but I didn't realize it was a.
But you can't count on, this correspondence folder to be your window
No.
to the neighboring towns, that's not gonna work.
No, because with that. for them-
Actually, I first
When they
found,
didn't declare it as a regional impact, they don't have to send us any notices. Only if they declared a regional impact. But what Belmont is doing is inundating us with notices. They're doing the opposite. They're doing it for a reason, because.
I
it's
knew
suitable.
about it because Scott called me about it. Scott Davis called me about it. That's how I first found out about it. That's how I first, know about the Casella.
Oh, Casella.
And then
no,
after that, I started reading the paper to follow what was going on with that, and that's how I found out about the motocross.
I have a Belmont resident, ex-selectman.
Well, Sherry LeBrec tells me too, stuff that we should know about. That's haircuts for men. And Sherry.
She's been on
I was just making a comment, just an observation.
No, I do, I think the notice, I
You
don't
just
know
check
when
that
it'll be, but at some point, they're gonna switch it, you know, it's gonna say email, and you gotta text everyone,
Yeah.
because that's how people find out about things, they don't read the newspaper.
All right, I think it's been a worthwhile meeting.
Hmm.
We'll see
next week.
next week. I'll entertain a motion to,
Make a motion to adjourn.
all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Are you guys having sewer up there?
Yep.
Oh, you are, thank you.
See what my priorities
That's
are.
right.
Say you guys. I could be going to the end.
Yeah.
So you're going tomorrow to Belmont line, Catherine's going to the Belmont. Are you going to the Belmont?